You know, Sonic's transition into 3D was pretty what? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it rough? I think we all know how the story goes. Sonic Adventure originally came out way back in the day, and people really liked it and thought it was a very good Sonic game and 3D platformer. But then over time, as the years went on, people started looking back on this game and go, oh, that game is really bad. It does not hold up. It's not actually good at all. But then you fast forward a couple more years, and now there's this whole new set of people that are like, actually, Sonic Adventure is amazing and fantastic, and it's the best Sonic game, and blah blah blah, and all these things. And it's gotten to this point where there are so many differing opinions about Sonic Adventure. I mean, if you just look up Sonic Adventure Review, you'll find 5,000 different videos of people talking about what makes the game good or bad, or why it's trash and doesn't hold up, or this or that, and so many different opinions. So many people have so many different things to say about this video game. And it would be very easy for me to just do the same thing and throw my opinion onto the pile with all the other ones. But I thought that instead of doing just that, why don't I try to do something a little bit more interesting with this video? So not only am I going to be going over my own thoughts of Sonic Adventure, but I want to explore what I think it is that makes this game so divisive. Why are there such differing opinions on this game? Why do some people really like it and some people really hate it? What is the deal with Sonic Adventure? What is the deal with this game in particular? Because I've never seen a game that has such split opinions with so many people having so much to say about it, and I want to figure out what is the reason for that. However, before we get to that, we have to talk about the version recommendation, as always. And for Sonic Adventure, it's pretty simple. You want to get Sonic Adventure DX on Steam on PC. However, you don't want to just load it up right from there, because the PC port of Sonic Adventure DX is very bad. What you want to do is fix the game and improve it with mods. Now, a lot of people will recommend that you get Better SADX, but actually that is incorrect. Better SADX is outdated and is no longer the best way to play Sonic Adventure on PC. Nowadays, you want to use PKR's mod loader, which I'll have a link to in the description. It's basically the same kind of thing as Better SADX, but even better. It adds a whole host of nice features that should have been in the original release, but weren't because it's a really shitty port that they did. But whatever, you can get it all nice and fixed up with the mod loader. On top of that, it also has the option to restore the game closer to its original Dreamcast version, because with Sonic Adventure DX, when they redid the game, they made a number of changes to it that a lot of people, myself included, actually feel are downgrades. And thankfully, the mod loader allows you to re-enable those old features from the Dreamcast version and make it a little bit better. Primarily in terms of visuals, like you can restore the original Dreamcast lighting and the original Dreamcast world textures, which I think just look a lot better and make the world look a lot more vibrant. But additionally, you can also swap out the DX character models for the Dreamcast character models, and this is kind of a very subjective thing. Some people prefer the DX character models because they're a higher poly count and kind of are closer to the character concept art of what these characters are supposed to look like. But then other people prefer the Dreamcast models as they have that low poly charm and all that. As for me, I don't know, I'm kinda in between. There are things I like about the Dreamcast models and things I like about the DX models. It's kind of on like a character per character basis. I can't really definitively say I prefer one set of models over the other one. But if I had to pick, then I would probably go with the original Dreamcast models of the classic character designs before the art style changed. Hell yeah! This is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but what can I say? I really like the classic character designs a lot more than the Uekawa redesigns. Fun fact, the art style change that happened in Adventure actually occurred relatively late into production, and you can actually see remnants of the older character models still in the game here and there. And thankfully, some lovely modder out there has managed to restore Sonic's original Dreamcast model, as well as create classic models to go along with all the other original characters, which I very much like. Oh, and another thing I should say, I absolutely mod the shit out of this game, so there's going to be a lot of stuff going on here that is not normally in Sonic Adventure. I'll explain some of the mods I have on as we go on, but as I said in my Sonic 1 video, I really have no interest in the original versions of these games. You might say it's unfair for me to be judging a version of the game that's patched up with mods, but you know what, it's my video and I can do whatever the fuck I want. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the meat and potatoes of what's important with a Sonic game, the core Sonic gameplay. And the first thing you do is pause the game and activate the free camera instead of the auto camera, because Sonic Adventure being made for the Dreamcast controller did not have a right stick to manually control the camera, so the game was designed around an automatic camera system, and it's very bad. Thankfully, in the DX version of the game, they added a free camera, which gives you manual analog camera control using the right stick, like a real video game. It's still not perfect, because the levels are still designed for the auto camera, and it will still sometimes force itself into the auto cam, and things can sometimes get a little bit janky with the camera anyway, but it's still a lot better than the auto camera is. Okay, now let's start talking about controlling Sonic. And before we get started, I just want to say, I do like this game, so before you start typing up your angry comments about how much I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm just a classic fanboy, just hear me out all the way through, and you might see what I'm getting at. So with Sonic Adventure, Sonic Team was attempting to take the classic 2D gameplay of the original Genesis Sonic games and translate that into 3D. So the first question we have to ask is, how good of a job did they do translating the gameplay of the original Sonic games into this new 3D environment? Well, as far as movement goes, they got that right. Sonic starts at a slow walk and then slowly accelerates up to his default maximum running speed. As far as turning goes in 3D, I think they did a pretty good job. The way it works in this game is that as you turn, Sonic will slow down, kind of respecting the laws of momentum to a degree, and as you make tighter turns, Sonic will slow down more and more. As you can see, as I tighten the circle here, I eventually come to a very slow walk. So that works fairly well, though it's not exactly perfect, because as you can see, if I make really tight turns, where I basically turn on a dime, you don't spend enough time turning for Sonic to slow down very much, allowing you to basically turn 180 and lose very little of your speed, which is not exactly how that should work in my opinion. As far as jumping goes, the jump in this game does feel pretty different than it did in the original games, primarily because the fully extended jump is really floaty. You stay in the air for a very long period of time, which on the surface seems like it's not really much of a problem, it's just slightly different, but I do actually think this has some problems that we'll get into later. Other things about jumping that are different from the originals in this game: falling from a great height does not cause Sonic to accelerate as he falls. You pretty much just fall at this one static falling speed, which isn't really that fast, which then also plays into that effect that was in the old 2D Sonic games, where if you bounced off of something from really high, then you would bounce up just as high as where you fell from. That is no longer a thing. Additionally, in the previous games, you were able to jump into enemies and you would just plow right through them, maintaining all of your speed as you went along. But in this game, you kind of like come to a dead stop in the air and bounce off the enemy once you jump into them, which definitely harms the flow in terms of being able to just keep on going. Additionally, because of how tightly you can turn in this game, momentum in terms of platforming is not really there in the same way that it was in the original games. In the original games, I did this thing that I refer to as like pulling back on the jumping, where if I'd be running right and I want to do some platforming without coming to a dead stop to kind of maintain my speed, I would start going left, and that would cause Sonic to slow down, but still keep going in the same direction. As you couldn't just get rid of your momentum in those games, you had to work with it and maintain it in some way. But here, that's not exactly the same. As you can see, if I jump in one direction, I can just immediately turn around and start moving in the opposite direction, and that does have a very significant effect on how the platforming feels, and makes it very different than it was in the other Sonic games. But honestly, even if those proper momentum physics were there for jumping, it wouldn't even really matter that much in this game because of one of the new air actions they've added, which is this air cancel here. What this does is it basically sets Sonic momentum in all directions to 0, and has you just fall in place wherever you are in the air, With this, you can essentially completely remove the concept of momentum entirely from platforming, because you can just suddenly get rid of all the speed that you had, which was fundamentally something you could not do in the original Sonic games. Knuckles could do it with his gliding, but that was a special case for an additional playable character. For Sonic, maintaining and building and working with momentum was what it was all about. But this air cancel enables you to just completely circumvent that. Additionally, you can use the air cancel very close to the ground to do the same thing for running around, where you can be running in one direction, air cancel, and immediately start running in the other direction. And this is just not how Sonic should play in 3D, in my opinion, based on the previous games. You should have to work with your speed, and you shouldn't be able to just redirect it instantly. The problem, I think, with the really tight turning in this game, I honestly think the controls are too good in this game. If we're talking about maintaining the feel of the original 2D Sonic games in 3D, then I feel like as you speed up, your turn radius should increase and make you unable to make really tight turns at high speeds. But that's just not how this game works, and again, it has a very significant effect on the feeling of platforming. As far as slopes go, they actually did a pretty decent job of getting the important things right. Running uphill will cause Sonic to slow down, running downhill will cause Sonic to speed up, and rolling kind of works the way it's supposed to as well. When rolling on flat ground or uphill, Sonic will slow down even more than he will on foot, and if you roll downhill, then Sonic will speed up more than he does running downhill. And yes, Sonic can, using hills and inclines, he can exceed his default maximum movement speed and go much faster, so that's pretty on point. Slope jumping as well works pretty much how you would expect. If you're running uphill and you jump, then you will jump higher, and if you're running downhill and you jump, then you will jump kind of forward, though you don't really gain much speed from that, because as I said, the jump in this game is kind of slow and floaty, but at least the trajectory is right, so it's close enough. I'll give it some points. This is relatively okay. So thus far, I'd say that things are pretty decent in terms of accuracy to the original 2D games. You know, not everything's perfect. The turning in particular, I think, could have been done better. But it's not that bad, and the game does feel very good to control. But now we get into things that end up being very different and kind of problematic, the main one being spin dashing. So now the way the spin dashing works is instead of having a crouch button, you don't really have that anymore now that we have an analog stick controlling in 3D, you now, kind of like Sonic 3D Blast, just hold a button and Sonic will go into the spin dash, and it charges over time, and when you release, Sonic will let loose. They've also made it so that while you're charging a spin dash, you can actually aim it in whatever direction you want, because it was kind of finicky in the old 2D games to make sure you were facing the direction you needed to be to spin dash, and that's a change that I actually like. That in itself is not that much of a problem. It's different, but it still works. The bigger issue is the fact that rolling is no longer a thing that you can really do in this game. You know how before, if you were on the move, then you could not do a spin dash. If you tried to hit down, then Sonic would just roll into a ball. In this game, you actually can start charging a spin dash while moving. You see, they've also added the ability for Sonic to uncurl out of his ball state anytime he wants, which is something that I really like on paper, but when you combine it with the ability to start a spin dash on the move, then you can just start spamming the spin dash like crazy, allowing you to get up to ridiculous speeds with no effort at all, and without having to use the terrain, you know, building momentum properly as you're supposed to in Sonic. And as you can clearly see with the super tight turn radius of this game, you're able to just fly all over the place at this ridiculously fast pace. And this is just fundamentally so wrong for Sonic and how it worked in the 2D games. This is not momentum, this is just raw speed that is fucking ridiculous. And this essentially irrelevantizes everything we've talked about up to this point. Like, who cares if Sonic properly, slowly accelerates up to a run? Who cares if you build speed while going downhill and lose speed while going uphill? None of that matters, because if you just spam the spin dash, then you will move at the maximum possible speed at all times. And it kinda breaks the game, especially when you combine this with the floaty jump of this game. Spin dash jumps are busted in this game. You can jump ridiculously long distances, skipping so much of the level design, And when it comes to slope jumping, the amount of height you can get off of slope jumps in this game is absolutely ridiculous with this spin dash. You could go into freaking space! Like, what is this? In the original 2D games, it wasn't just about speed, it was about building that speed, maintaining that speed, applying that speed. But here, that's not really the case. Sonic Adventure essentially just boils down to spamming the spin dash and using spin dash jumps to skip all of the level design, making it a very poor translation of the original 2D games into 3D. And that's not the only problem. Running on walls is totally jacked up in this game. The physics in this game and the collision are extremely questionable. And so when it comes to going on walls, I mean, you can see for yourself that it doesn't exactly work how you would probably imagine it should in the original 2D games translated into 3D. I don't know exactly how it should work, but I imagine this is probably not it. This is where you can start to see that the illusion of this game's physics and how it attempts to recreate what was in the 2D games really starts to break down, because, like, take a look at what happens when you're going downhill and you jump. You know, I said before that the trajectory of your jump is correct, that it becomes like a forward jump. But that's not really because the physics are enabling that, that's actually because the game is altering what gravity is supposed to be for you, and causing you to jump and fall in different directions than purely up and down. You can see this in moments where if you jump off slopes with a lot of speed, eventually gravity is going to redirect and correct itself and remember how it's supposed to work and have you start falling straight down. But in a lot of instances, you can be falling sideways in this game, which is very shoddy, I would say. And as I said, collision in this game is very questionable. When you touch walls in this game, it does not go very smoothly. The collision is just very, very odd. Your character starts to derp out and it gets very wonky, and it just feels very bad to control, and you can totally lose all of your speed if you collide with a wall, and it really messes with the flow. I mean, not that it really matters, because you can just immediately do a spin dash to get back to full speed, but still, it doesn't feel good. And that's not even to mention that the collision is so bad that you can very easily just go right through walls and right through the floor and die out of no fault of your own, which is not very good. And these awful physics and bad collision combine to make traditional Sonic staples not really viable in this game's physics system. Like, going through loop-de-loops, going upside down, is not really a thing in Sonic Adventure. There are moments in the game where you can try, and as you can see, it just does not work very well. The controls get very weird, Sonic can barely stick to walls and ceilings, and, I mean, I think this speaks for itself. The physics of this game were just not nearly what they were in the previous games, and that comes through in the gameplay. There's a lot of stuff that you could do in the previous games that you just can't do in this game, and it just doesn't feel anything like it did before. This is very much its own beast. I've heard some people say that they think that Sonic Adventure is a nearly perfect transition of the old 2D games into 3D, and that it plays basically the same. And I can only assume you have that opinion if you have no idea how those games worked, because this is not how they worked. These fucked up physics is the reason that things like loops and such are automated in this game, because Sonic Team obviously must have realized that there was no way in fuck you'd be able to go through loops and corkscrews and such with these physics, so instead they use scripting to automate all of these sequences, which means you don't do anything anymore. The gameplay that was involved in loops and speed sequences is completely gone. They have been reduced to nothing but shallow spectacle. You might say, well, hey, all you did was hold right through those sequences in the 2D games anyway, so what's really the difference? But I will disagree with that, because in those games, you could do things through loops. I mean, first of all, loops functioned as speed gates. You needed to have enough speed in order to clear the loop, so that alone already required that you build and maintain your speed properly to get through them. But additionally, you could roll through the second half of a loop to build speed. You can use slope jumps to build speed in loops. There was actual gameplay to them. They were not just there for the sake of it. Now in this game, holding forward is the only thing you can do in these scripted sequences to get through them. In fact, if you try to do anything else, then the game just fucking breaks and launches your character all over the place. The physics get all kinds of whacked up if you try to play during this part of the game. And this, to me, is fundamentally incorrect if you're trying to simulate the classic 2D Sonic games in 3D. This is just a shallow way to imitate the spectacle of what was in those games without actually having any of the substance. And that doesn't go for just loops. Springs have become victim to very much the same thing. In the old 2D games, springs would maintain your momentum. Like if you take this spring in Starlight Zone right here, if I jump on this spring here with no speed, then I have to accelerate in the air, and I don't have enough speed to clear this gap and make it to the other end. However, if I get a running start and jump on that same spring, then my momentum carries forward and I can clear that gap. However, in Sonic Adventure, this is not how springs work at all. Instead, they take away control from the player almost completely, and they launch you to a very specific point in 3D space, giving you very minimal control, if any at all, and then you can only kind of steer yourself around once you're falling, and this again removes a lot of the gameplay that springs had, and again turns them into kind of just shallow spectacle. Even basic things from the original games they managed to mess up, like when you got hit, your coins would explode everywhere and bounce all over the place. But in this game, and most 3D games going forward, for some reason your coins just pop out in a little circle around you. Like, what the heck is this? Like, did the people working on this game not play any of the previous Sonic games? This is not how this is supposed to work, guys, come on! And speaking of getting hit, that's not something that really happens very often in Sonic Adventure, at least not from the enemies. In the old games, enemies were serious threats, and you really had to maneuver around them if you wanted to get through the level without getting hit. However, now that you're in 3D, it's very easy to just run past all the enemies, and there's pretty much nothing they can do about it. Though to be fair, that is the case in most 3D games even to this very day, so I won't give the game that much flack for it, but it is still a problem, so I'm still going to criticize it. Though I will give the game this, they have added a new mechanic that I really like. You know how in the old games you'd get hit by enemies and that would knock you back, and sometimes you'd get hit into a bottomless pit or onto a lower path and it would get really annoying? Well, in this game, they've added a feature where during that knockback animation, you can jump into the air, giving you an opportunity to recover and save yourself. That's pretty cool, I actually like that. Let's see, what else is wrong? Oh yeah, running on flat ground and transitioning to running into water, that's no longer in the game. Oh yeah, and they ran back elemental shields, like we're back to just the default shield with no special properties, and the only elemental shield in this game is the electric shield that draws in coins, but the double jump effect of it is gone, so we have for some reason removed one of the coolest new features added in the last game. Whew. Okay. Now that complaining about all that is over, let's complain about something else, and that is Sonic's new air action introduced in this game. So the insta-shield is gone, now Sonic has this little air dash he can do, and I don't really have a problem with this necessarily, but I do think it does have one flaw to it that is more because of the other air action introduced in this game. Because if you're close to an enemy or an object, then instead of doing the air dash, Sonic will instead do the homing attack, kind of returning from Sonic 3D Blast, but now part of Sonic's permanent moveset. And the homing attack just launches Sonic automatically at a target, and then he bounces up off of it. This was implemented into the game to help people with precisely landing on things like enemies and objects, which a lot of people struggle with in 3D platformers. And the thing about the homing attack to me is that I've seen a lot of people really praise this ingenious idea by Sonic Team to implement this to solve that problem, and that it's the perfect solution. And I gotta say, I am not drinking the Kool-Aid that these people are drinking. While the homing attack is a solution to that problem, I don't necessarily think it is an ideal solution. The problem I have with the homing attack is that it takes this issue of the difficulty of precise movement in 3D platforming, and it doesn't assist the player and help them do it, it just completely removes it from the game entirely. Instead, all you have to do is jump in the air, get close enough to a target, point your stick at them, and just hit the jump button again, and then the game does everything for you. there's just nothing interesting about that gameplay. There's no depth to it. There's no anything, really. It's very mindless, it's very binary, it's very uninteresting. This problem is most prevalent in the instances where it is most used, in homing attack chains. You got a whole bunch of stuff floating in the air, and you're meant to bounce from one thing to the other, but instead of actually having to maneuver in a 3D platformer, you just repeatedly hit the jump button and the game does everything for you. The only thing that's fun about this is watching Sonic bounce from thing to thing, but you as the player are doing almost nothing. Additionally, because the lock-on has no indicator telling you whether you're gonna air dash or homing attack, it's very easy, even for a very experienced player like me, to still have an issue where I don't do a homing attack when I want to, and I end up air dashing to my death. The homing attack, in my opinion, is a very flawed mechanic, and I think there are many other ways that they could have implemented some sort of aid for 3D platforming that would have been more fun and more interesting, but the way that they chose to do it is like the least fun, interesting, and engaging way they possibly could have. It's just a crappy mechanic, to be honest. And as the icing on the cake, 90% of these homing attack chains are completely pointless because you can just spin dash jump right past all of them. So why are these even here? Another mechanic they introduced in this game is more automation and shallow spectacle. It's these little orange jump pads here. And what do you do with these? You stand on them and repeatedly hit the jump button, and Sonic automatically jumps from pad to pad. Meaning you do basically nothing as Sonic does something that's supposed to be cool. I mean, I like the idea. This is clearly supposed to be incorporating Sonic's, like, athleticism and stuff from, like, the CD intro into gameplay, but it would be cooler if there was actual gameplay to it. And the exact same thing can be said for the Lightspeed Dash. I mean, first of all, the Lightspeed Dash needs to be charged with a spin dash, and it takes a couple of seconds to do, which totally breaks the flow and it just kinda sucks. In later games, they made it so you can just do the Lightspeed Dash instantly, so you know what, I'm just gonna throw in a mod that lets me do the same in this game because it makes it better. But even then, at the end of the day, what is the Lightspeed Dash? You see a trail of coins and you just hit the button and then Sonic dashes along it automatically with you doing very little, just like most of the other mechanics added in this game. It's a very binary system, which is not how the original Sonic games work. All of the abilities and all the tools you had in the original 2D Sonic games were all very open-ended. There was no correct way to use them. They were up to you as the player to figure out how to use things like rolling and spin dashing and gliding with Knuckles and all that. It was up to you to figure out how to use them and what to do with them, and that's what made it fun. Here, almost none of the mechanics work like that. So overall, considering all of these things in terms of controlling Sonic in a 3D space, I have to say that Sonic Team completely failed to recreate the feeling of the original 2D Sonic games in 3D. This doesn't play anything like them. And the core of Sonic is two things, the physics and the level design, and one of those things is completely wrong. And unfortunately, the other thing isn't that much better. Now, credit where credit is due, I will say that sometimes the level design does feel very similar to what was in Sonic 3 and Knuckles specifically. Sometimes it really does feel like a 3D version of those types of levels. But if you recall from my 3 and Knuckles video, I also have some issues with that game's level design, primarily in how it is very linear and very forced. In Sonic 2, there was a lot of split paths and multiple areas to explore, and in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, they kind of reduced that to focus more on, like, singular areas that they forced the player to travel through, and that's kind of how this game is designed, though it does still attempt to do things like the multi-tiered paths with the difficult fast path and the easy slow path. There are attempts at that type of level design in this game, but it ultimately doesn't even really matter that much because in almost all instances, you can just skip all of that level design with spin dash jumps. So the level design ends up not even really being relevant a lot of the time. Look, I'm all down for shortcuts and stuff like that, but in the original games, most of the shortcuts you could take were actually designed and intended by the developers, whereas here you are very clearly breaking these levels 90% of the time and jumping past everything. Another issue I have is what I call camera-based level design, where the level design only really works if you don't move the camera and look around your environment and have awareness of the 3D space that you're in. Take this part right here where you go up this elevator and then you have to go left into this area here. You go along all these dash panels and you go up this ladder, and then you take this hook to the other side of this area because the wall from the lower area before is too high for you to jump up. Except that if you have spatial awareness, then you'll realize that the elevator you took at the very beginning is basically at the same elevation as the end area, and you can just do this. Additionally, the speed sections of Sonic Adventure are just that, speed sections. There's no platforming when it comes to speed in this game. All you really do in these speed paths is just run forward. There's no real gameplay here to speak of. You look at a level like Windy Valley, and like 50% of it is just running along these pathways, doing nothing. And if you watch my Sonic 2 video, I talked about passive traps, where in the old Sonic games, in sequences like this, where you would just be going through loops and stuff, this would actually be a setup to trick the player into passivity, and they would then punish the player for that passivity, either with traps or knocking you down onto a lower path or things like that. That type of gameplay is completely absent from Sonic Adventure. In these speed sections, you now just do nothing. Passivity is what they are. Unless, of course, you just use the poor level design to jump past everything. But another issue I have with this game's level design is the set pieces. Yes, I'm going there. The issue I have with the set pieces is that they're just not fun. First of all, you have set pieces like the whale chase, or loops, or any sort of speed set piece like that, where you literally do nothing. There is no gameplay here. Now, some people will say I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, because what's the big deal? These last for a couple of seconds, and then you get back to playing. But the problem is that Sonic games are inherently designed to be replayed over and over and over again in order to improve your time on a level. And so even a 7-second long whale chase sequence, while harmless and a fun novelty the first time you play the level, boy howdy do you not give a fuck about it the 50th time you've played the level. This is the exact same problem that many people have with long cinematic supers in fighting games, where they're cool the first time you see them, and then after your 300th match, you never want to see that animation again because it just stops you from playing a video game for 8 seconds. No one cares at that point, and it just takes away from the gameplay. And yes, sequences like this were in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and I didn't like them there either, but there were a lot less of them than there are in this game. However, to be fair, there are set pieces in this game that actually do have gameplay to them, such as running down the building in Speed Highway or the go-kart race section of Twinkle Park. These are better, though I still find the gameplay of them is not particularly engaging because it's very simple, but at least it's something, so I won't give them that much flack. If you're gonna have set pieces in a Sonic game, I can be okay with that as long as there is gameplay there, and ideally, fun gameplay that has an amount of depth to it that feels in line with Sonic. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. The last thing I want to talk about with Sonic Adventure's level design is its use of dash panels. Yes, I'm talking about that too. The way I see it, dash panels were implemented into this game to essentially fix a quote-unquote problem that existed in the previous Sonic games, which is that you could not have enough speed to clear certain obstacles in the original Sonic games, and that would force you to come to a halt and have to build your speed back up, which would really kill the flow of the game and get kind of awkward. Now, the spin dash was implemented to solve this problem, and I think it did just fine of a job with solving it, but I assume Sonic Team felt that having that sort of thing be in the game at all was too much of a problem, so they implemented dash panels at the start of pretty much every single speed-based sequence to ensure that the player always had enough speed to get through it. This cheapens the value of speed. As I said, Sonic games were not just about speed, they were about momentum, building it and preserving it and applying it. But in this game, that doesn't matter. You can do the worst job in the world of manually going fast and controlling and maintaining your speed, And it doesn't matter, you'll get through every speed sequence just fine because, again, the game automates the process. Using dash panels, it instantly gives you the speed you need, and then with scripting, it totally takes away control, again, turning these into simple moments of shallow spectacle. They also use dash panels quite liberally just to get the player up to speed. At the start of a speed section that's not scripted, just a long tube for the player to run down, they'll give you dash panels to get you going at the speed you need. This takes away from the building of speed that's supposed to be prevalent in Sonic games, where you have to earn your speed yourself by building it up and then working to keep it. The thing about the original 2D Sonic games is that they had a certain flow to them. They were not just raw speed all day, every day. Because of the momentum and the way that momentum could be converted by slopes and the way that you would build momentum manually using the physics and just using your natural acceleration, Sonic games had this very nice ebb and flow to them where you would have a lot of speed and then you'd get launched up and you'd slowly build it back up as you were falling. Then you would have that speed when you landed on the ground. You would go downhill, build the speed, use it to jump, and as you were jumping, air drag would cause you to slow down, and then you'd be going forward, and you would just keep this flow going using the terrain. The ups and the downs of speed, it was all very smooth, gradually building and losing speed, and trying to ride that wave. Sonic Adventure and all of the games of this gameplay style completely lack this ebb and flow. Instead, they have a much more erratic, sudden gain of a ton of speed down to nothing, and back and forth like that. The homing attack is a perfect example of this, where you go stop, go stop, go stop, go stop, go stop. And for just running around on the ground, you could use the spam dash to instantly get to maximum speed, and then you'll hit something like a spring, and it will launch you to a specific area, and you'll basically come down all the way to zero, to no speed once you hit the ground, but then you'll probably immediately either spin dash or hit a dash panel, rocketing you back up to full speed again, and you'll just constantly be ricocheting back and forth, basically between maximum speed and no speed all the time. This does not have that smooth flow that existed in the original 2D Sonic games. And out of all the mechanical differences that I listed, this is actually the biggest one that prevents this game from feeling like a true Sonic game as a sequel to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. On top of all the mechanical differences and the level design differences, it results ultimately at the end in a game that I genuinely cannot call a Sonic game based on what a Sonic game is as established by all the games in the series up to this point. This is not a Sonic game. This is something different. This is a Sonic Adventure game. All this being said, I'm sure it sounds like I am just a classic Sonic fanboy, and I absolutely hate everything that Adventure does, and I think that classic Sonic is the only good form of Sonic, and I don't like this at all because it's not like the classics, and blah blah blah. But here's the thing. The Sonic games up to this point were a very specific type of game that was unlike any other game out there. The physics and level design created for a very unique speed-based, momentum and physics-based platforming experience. This game lacks both of the key elements that make it feel like a Sonic game. And I don't think there's anything wrong with someone buying and playing a Sonic game and wanting it to play like a Sonic game. The fact that this game plays absolutely nothing like a Sonic game, I think is fair to have an issue with if you're a fan of the Sonic games. However, I do not think that it is fair to judge a game on what it is not. I think that to some degree, every game needs to be looked at on its own in a vacuum for what it is. And when I do that, and I step away from this being a Sonic game, and I don't worry about that, and I just look at Sonic Adventure as a 3D platformer, dude, this game fucking kicks ass. I know, I'm doing a total 180 here, but I wanted to go through all of that because I wanted to establish, as I said at the start of this video, why I think some people like this game and some people don't. Now that we've gone through one of the reasons I think people don't like it, let's talk about what makes this gameplay so fucking awesome. The thing that really makes Sonic Adventure for me is that this game, unlike most 3D platformers, has true, genuine depth to its movement. I mean, let's be honest, most 3D platformers are incredibly simplistic and basic games. Even really, really good 3D platformers that are really fun and well-liked, not just from back then, but still to this day, the vast majority of them have very binary movement that is very simple and straightforward. You move at one set movement speed, and you have a static jump and maybe a double jump, and sometimes like a glide or a hover or something like that. And that is usually almost as far as the platforming goes. It results in gameplay that is very, very basic and rarely interesting. All you can do is ask the player to jump a gap from one platform to another, and there is a set maximum distance that the player can jump, and there's very little you can do to vary that up. You can make the platform smaller, you can add obstacles and enemies, you can make the platforms move around. There are things you can do to add challenge to that, but at the end of the day, the simple act of moving in most 3D platformers is very, very simple and honestly not really that interesting. While I will criticize the homing attack for also being a mechanic that's not interesting at all, the spin dash in this game, while being totally fuck-busted and not at all faithful to the classic games, is super fun. Spam dashing around like this is crazy! You're going so ridiculously fast, and with the tight turning of this game, you can maneuver so goddamn well at high speeds in this game. And spin dash jumping is insanely fun. Unlike most 3D platformers that have one static jump, in this game you can jump in a billion different ways because of how the physics work. All you need is the tiniest little incline and you can go to the moon. This really opens up the level design and quite frankly breaks it. The thing is, doing this stuff is inherently really fun because of how great and good feeling this movement is. The thing about these shortcuts that I've been showing off is that I discovered 90% of this stuff on my own. I didn't take it from speedrunners or seeing this stuff online. I have just played this game so much and experimented so much with the spin dash jumping and the movement in this game that I have discovered countless shortcuts upon shortcuts upon shortcuts in this game. And when you put it all together, it is just so much fun. When you first play this game for the first time, you're not going to do any of this stuff. You're going to play it generally as the level designers and game designers intended you to. But as you get more experience with the game and more comfortable with the spin dash jump, you will start to see opportunities for shortcuts and skips. And it can eventually get to the point where you can snap these levels in half and then snap them in half again, which is objectively bad from a level design perspective, but from the perspective of playing this as a 3D platformer, dude, this is so fucking cool. This is so much fun. I love spin dash jumping in this game, and just moving around in general because of how good Sonic feels. Even simply just running around in this game feels excellent. The fact that the level design doesn't really work and you can skip 90% of it, the fact that the homing attack chains are completely ignorable, none of this stuff really bothers me very much because what I do while I skip and break all this stuff is just so inherently enjoyable. And this will actually bring us into the time attack element of Sonic, which is something that I have talked about in all the previous main games is very important to me when it comes to playing Sonic games. The time attack experience of Sonic, trying to play these levels over and over and over, finding the fastest way through them and practicing it until I can get really good runs through the level, that is a really big deal for me, and if that experience is not fun, that can make or break a Sonic game for me. And in Sonic Adventure, while functionally none of the physics or level design work like the original 2D Sonic games, time attacking this game is just as fun as it is in those games because of how deep and how open moving around in this game is. This game is the ultimate sandbox playground for people that like to experiment with movement mechanics. I just cannot say how much fun it is to just run through Sonic's levels and just do stuff. Just go around and break the level design, do spin dash jumps, see if I can jump from here to here and there to there and all kinds of stuff. Even someone like me who has been playing this game literally since it came out when I was a little kid and I have so much experience with it, in my most recent playthrough of the game to capture footage for these videos, I found tons of new shortcuts that I had never discovered before in the 20 billion times I've played this game. That is how deep and how open this game can truly be. The only other 3D platformer series that really has any kind of depth resembling this to its movement as far as mainstream stuff goes is Mario. Everything else is very straightforward and basic, but ironically, the two biggest platformers back in the day, Mario and Sonic, are the ones that to me are head and shoulders way more enjoyable on the thing that is most important for a platformer, which is the platforming. I know I've just been gushing about this stuff lately, but I really feel like we needed a tonal shift after all of that negativity. As I said, I don't think it's fair to judge a game for what it's not. You have to look at a game for what it is, and while this game fails to be a Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, this type of game and what it is super fun, and I really, really enjoy this gameplay. And I think that for anybody else that's like me that likes to dig into movement mechanics that have a lot to them and have a lot of depth, there is absolutely something for you here. But for people that just play the game the one time and they just get overwhelmed with the jank and the bad level design and the poor recreation of the 2D gameplay and physics, they're never gonna realize this stuff. They're never gonna unlock the potential of this game's movement and level design and see how much fun it can be to break. This, I think, is the #1 dividing factor between whether or not you like Sonic Adventure or you don't, is do you discover how great this game is to break, and how much do you enjoy that type of gameplay? People who like to shit on Sonic Adventure will say that anybody that enjoys this game is entirely blinded by nostalgia, and you only like it because you did as a kid, and if you played it now, you would not enjoy the game because of all of its flaws, but I have to vehemently disagree with that because of how great the movement of this game is. This is something that, honestly, you don't enjoy as a kid, because this is something that's going to fly right over your head the first time you play it. This is something you can only really enjoy as a more seasoned gamer who can look out for these types of things and dig into system mechanics once you start to notice what's going on in the game. So at the end of the day, Sonic's core gameplay, I think, is the most important element of Sonic Adventure, and it doesn't play almost anything like the original 2D games, and I can't blame anyone for having an issue with that. I also have an issue with it because I love that physics-based gameplay so much and that fantastic level design, and I really would have preferred to get that gameplay in 3D. However, the gameplay that is here, when standing on its own 2 feet, despite the fact that it's jank as fuck, the physics are very, very inconsistent, the level design is broken, and there's a lot of automation and stuff that takes away control and isn't very interesting, still, at the end of the day, the core movement is so strong that it manages to, for me, override many of the flaws of this game and make a game that is way more fun than most 3D platformers that I've played. So judging Sonic Adventure solely on the core Sonic gameplay, yes, absolutely, I would call Sonic Adventure a very good game, despite its flaws. However, Sonic Adventure is not just its core Sonic gameplay. There's a lot more to this game that we still need to talk about, but I'm gonna do that in the next part because this video alone was this freaking long. So I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed.